in life, you've got to do what's right for you. If you're not happy, the people that you care about around you aren't going to be happy with you. It starts with you. So figure that out for yourself. And when you
Yeah.
get there, people are going to be excited for you and for themselves.
As a vegan, do you ever feel like you're living in a parallel universe, aware of things that many others don't even seem to notice, let alone acknowledge? I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse podcast. We talk with vegans from around the globe who, like you, are living lives of integrity and compassion with an eye toward justice. Through their personal stories, you'll come to see that you're not an outlier. In fact, you're part of an entire posse of individuals who aren't just keeping the peace, they're creating it through their food choices and beyond. You won't be saddling up, but you're in for the ride of your life. Welcome to the Vegan Posse. Hey Posse, I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse, bringing vegans together to help animals everywhere. Just a heads up that I'm going to be taking a hiatus from the regular podcast over the summer, but feel free to stay in touch at veganposse.email@gmail.com. And if you value the work that we do here at the Posse, feel free to contribute via Venmo or PayPal. Just send your donation to Vegan Posse. And now for this week's episode, another plant-based business that you need to know about. What came before the butcher? Find out from Danny O'Malley, founder of this plant-based meat company. I'll let you hear the story directly from him. So enjoy this conversation with Danny O'Malley. Danny, welcome to the Vegan Posse. Are you ready for the ride of your life?
I am ready. Let's do it, Chrissy.
Sweet. That's what I like to hear. All right. Well, you've done a lot of really interesting things, but I love to take it way back to the beginning. So why don't you talk a little about where you grew up and whether you ever thought about food and the animals in our food system when you were growing up?
Oh, wow, you're going to dig in deep right from the start, aren't you?
Heck yeah.
Well, I grew up in the Midwest. I am was born in Milwaukee, grew up outside of Milwaukee, kind of in not even kind of in farmland, and so I was surrounded by animals. But in that environment back there, we didn't know. I didn't know what vegan was. I mean, I grew up in a meat and potato family. I have six brothers and sisters, and we'd sit down at the
Six.
table.
Wow.
Yeah,
Where are you in that lineup?
I'm number six out of seven, so I'm the youngest
Wow.
boy. Yeah, and
Wow.
sandwiched in between two girls there. But yeah, my mom had seven kids in 10 years, and no twins.
Amazing. Some Irish twins, though, maybe. Maybe
Yes,
some.
exactly. So my upbringing was pretty Midwestern. Cheese, meat, a little bit of veggies here and there, but that wasn't the staple unless we were summertime, and then we had fresh vegetables and things like that. But that wasn't the focus in our lives. And honestly, if you had asked me when I was 12 years old what a vegan was, I wouldn't have had any idea what you were talking about.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have clicked for me. I probably would have been able to talk to you about vegetarian, but I wouldn't have been able to explain it. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
been able to explain the difference. And so when I was about 16 years old, my dad had an opportunity to move out to California, Santa Barbara of all places, going from Milwaukee to Santa Barbara in the winter.
That's a culture change. Wow.
Yeah,
It sounds
yeah,
like a
yes.
welcome change in the winter.
Well, I was 16, so, and I had a lot of family back there in Wisconsin, so they said, hey, look, if you want to stay here and finish your high school here, you can do that or come with us. And I said, that's really a question? I'm going, so so we picked up in the middle. It was in January. It was, I think, about 5 degrees below zero in Milwaukee when we got on the plane and headed out, and which was normal weather back there. And then got off the plane in Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara has, you get off on the tarmac. There is no terminal that you go into. It's too small. And it was probably maybe 60, 62 degrees and rainy and drizzly. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in paradise, right? Where's the pool? I'm going swimming. but I'll tell you what was the real interesting thing to me when I got out there, and of course this is quite a few years ago, more than 40 years ago, um, is I started discovering plants that we could eat that I didn't really knew existed. I mean, there were avocado trees all over the place, and I don't think I ever knew what an avocado was prior to that. And of course, now I absolutely love avocados. Artichokes, didn't know what an artichoke was. I mean, there's so many vegetables. I'm like, what is this? And out in California during that time, they were still fresh and ready pretty much year round. And now, with the food chain the way it is and the accessibility, it's a lot easier to get fresh vegetables anywhere in the country. But back then in Wisconsin, it was tough during the winter to find fresh vegetables. And for me, it was exciting when the summer came and there were cornfields all over the place, and we could go pick our corn or go to a local stand and get corn and just really cool. And berries, there would be blackberries and raspberries, and I'd go out and in the woods and out in the fields and pick fresh blackberries and raspberries. I didn't think anything about my diet because I was just like most people, just kind of following, or kids, I should say, following what I was fed. My parents were feeding me that.
Yeah.
So it was really an evolution for me coming out to California. And that's when a lot of things in my lifestyle changed, including the way I ate. Now, I didn't become vegan until about 9 years ago, but the transition was happening the minute I got off that plane and started realizing that there was so much more out there than what we had. So the whole discovery of what the animals go through, the environment, and how everything locks in place with me was a journey of mine that really started about 11 years ago. And that's when I was just kind of trying to figure out where my place was in this world. There's definitive black and whites in our life, but black and white, we get up every day, but the gray is, where do you go? And what do you do once you get up, right? Every day, I'm black and white. I'm going to eat every day, but what am I going to eat?
Yeah.
Right? Those are the grays. And I turned 50. I said, what am I doing? And I'm halfway through my life. I got to figure out what I'm going to do with the other half, right? I've learned a lot over the past 50 years. And so I ran 12 marathons in 12 months.
Wow. Which ones did you do? Can you list them?
I don't know if I
I've run two marathons. I'm just wondering.
Well, I did the LA marathon. I did the Orange County marathon. I did Long Beach marathon. I did San Francisco marathon. Mostly along the coast. I was out in Vegas and, mostly along the West Coast. There's so many activities out here in the West all year round that you can make that happen.
Had you been a runner before you started doing marathons?
Yeah, I actually been running since I was a kid, probably since I was 12. I ran my first marathon when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
Back in Wisconsin. And then I kind of backed away from it and I ran cross country in middle school and high school. And so I've always been pretty active that way. But it's a lot different when you're 50 years old,
Yeah, so, I'm a daily runner myself. So yeah.
So
what was going on for you, personally and professionally at that time? It sounds like you were doing a lot of thinking about your life and what you wanted to make of it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. You just realize that you have a definitive amount of time in front of you, right? And to me, I figured at 50 I was at that halfway point because I believe that I'm going to live to be 100, and I think you have to believe that or you're not going to, right? So at that point in time, I kind of reflected on my life and what I have. I have three amazing kids. I've gone through a lot of different things in my career and ups and downs and right and left and like everybody else in life. And I thought, well,
not
what
me.
am I
It's been a smooth trajectory, just constant forward progress. I mean, no hard times or bumps or anything like that. Yeah.
Well,
but I hear other people experience.
Yeah, that would be.
I'm being a little sarcastic, of course.
Yeah.
But anyway, go on.
If that was the truth, that would be beyond the exception of the rule. I think it's just not realistic for anybody. But some people live kind of sheltered lives. I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't because I learned a lot along the way. And so at 50, I said, "Hey, I'm going to go do something." So what I was going to do was run 12 marathons in 12 months, but that wasn't enough. And I got to 51. I said, I'm kind of in a rut. I'm working, a corporate job, at the world's largest food service distributor, and I was doing well there, but I wasn't. It wasn't my thing, right?
What were you doing in the food industry?
Well, I was a director for Cisco Food Service at the time, and my job was to manage specialty sales teams and the marketing and promotions and things for Cisco at
Okay.
that time.
And
So
how are you feeling? How is your health and everything? It sounds like you're very fit and active.
yeah, I've never had any real issues with my health, and I've been fortunate, that I've never gone in and had surgery or anything like that. I've never had any major scares, uh, except for one that I kind of reflect back on now in my life, and that was the year. It's funny because I always tell my youngest son who lives with me, I said, the last time I was sick was 6 months before you were born, and he's turning 26. And I said, it's because I realized back then what was making me sick. And it was, I was laid up in bed. I was stressed out because I had a new job. I was in my relationship with my what is my ex-wife now was in shambles, and a lot of it had to do with me. And I had another baby coming, so there were just I mean it was just very stressful for me, and I literally was starting this new job, going into training, and I had to call in and say I can't make it in. I'm so sick I can't even get out of bed, and I literally lied in bed for about 4 or 5 days, and I just was drained. My body wasn't working right. Things just weren't happening. I went in to see the doctor, and the doctor said, "Tell me about what's going on in your life, because
Mm.
I'm struggling trying to figure out what's wrong with you." And it came down to the stress level that I had at the time. That I was just really stressed about so many things happening in my life. And after I got well, and I did shortly thereafter, I decided that whatever I was going to do going forward was going to relieve me of that stress that made me physically sick. And so that's what I did from that point forward. Tracking forward now to 20, I don't know what year that was, 2014 or something like 2013, when oh, somewhere around that. Anyways, about 12 years ago, I was running those marathons. And as a runner, you have a lot of time to think, right? This was my revelation. Every time I ran, I was in this kind of cloud of a daydream, like, what am I going to do? And everything clears up for me. It's like, hey, I can do anything I choose to go out there and do. And so at that time, I said, I need to change my job, right? I
Mm.
need something that I'm passionate about, I'm driven, that excites me, that is part of my lifestyle and who I am. And ironically, within a couple of months, a gentleman came into my office and said, and he was working for Beyond Meat. And we sat down, had a really great conversation, and he said, "Danny, we're challenged by the fact that, here you're working in LA with Cisco, and it should be the greatest market for our products, but you guys aren't doing a very good job of selling our products, and we want to, what can we do to make that better?" And I said, "Well, let me take a close look." And I had heard of them, but this is 11 years ago. Nobody really knew who they were back then.
Hmm.
And they were just kind of pushing into food service. And he said, and we talked for a while, and I said, let me do what I can to help. And right before he got up, he said, "Hey, one other thing, I'm the salesman right now for Beyond, and it's only me. I'm out on the East Coast. Beyond Meat is based on the West Coast. We don't have anybody out here. We're looking for somebody." And he left, and I started thinking, and I'm like, God, I, I think that's me.
Really? You were you vegan at the time? You were not vegan
No,
yet. Okay.
I wasn't vegan. And I started looking into Beyond Meat and thinking, these guys are on the right track. And I think that's the track I want to be on. And I'm definitely heading in that direction anyways, because I had already been cutting back. I had stopped eating beef already and was kind of cutting back and trying to figure out what I was doing in my life. And I thought, this is really exciting. And I called him up maybe an hour or two later, and I said, "Hey, I think I know that who the guy is, and I've got the perfect guy for you." And he said, "Great, Danny. Who is it?" And I said, "It's me." And he says, "I didn't want to say anything when I walked into the office because you're working at this corporation. And it wouldn't have been good for me to offer you or even say, hey, but I thought you would be great too." And so I literally next week I went in and met with the two founders of Beyond Meat. Most people don't know there were actually two founders, but Ethan Brown is the founder and CEO um, at the company, and met with both of them. I don't think there were even 20 people on the team at Beyond at the time. It was a really small team, mostly food scientists.
Mm.
A little bit marketing, and then a couple of salespeople. That was it. And so within a week, I had that job. I was leaving my corporate job and was ready to head out and do something that I thought was going to be really exciting, and it was.
And had you gone vegan? Did you decide to go vegan when you took the job, or like where were you on that
Now,
whole trajectory?
interesting story is, and you may not know this, but many of these companies that make plant-based or vegan meats or cheeses, a lot of their employees aren't vegan.
No, I'm well aware of that because, in
Yeah,
fact, when I was in touch with you and your people about this interview, that was one of the questions I've learned to ask. Just because
yeah,
someone has a plant-based business does not mean the person's vegan. Because our policy on the Vegan Posse, it's not a question of judgment, but that is the one line
yeah.
that we have for guests is, we're not the vegan police, but if you don't identify as vegan, then
Right, right.
this is not the
Which I
place.
do,
Yeah.
and I'll walk you through how I got to that stage. By the way, I am the only one at my company that is fully vegan. Now we
Interesting.
have,
Interesting.
the
Yeah.
flexitarians and the meat reducers and people that are, that love our products. But
Why do you
um,
discriminate against vegans, Danny? That sounds very, very
I
awful.
I don't, and I love vegans. I mean, I'm a vegan, so there you have it
I
right
know. I'm
there.
kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time. Yes. Yes.
So I started working for Beyond, and what was really interesting about working for Beyond in the early days is most people didn't know what we were doing, why we were doing it, and how we were doing it, and so I spent most of my time just explaining who we were, what our mission and vision was, and how we, we're going to change the world, or at least change it for some people along the way, right? And that's completely different today. Now, when I go out and talk to people, almost everybody knows what plant-based meat or plant-based cheese or any kind of plant-based products are that are out there mimicking animal-based proteins. I don't ever really come against that wall anymore. Now it's a matter of, hey, do you want to try it? I'd love to try it. Is it great? Is it good? And that's really what it comes down to more than anything. And then, of course, price. But so I was working for Beyond for about a year, and a buddy of mine and I would work out at another buddy's gym. And my friend was a little bit heavy set, and one day we were talking, and we both decided to do like a 90-day program, right? Where we're going to work out at least 5 days a week, and we're going to eat healthy. Well, I was already pretty much eating healthy, um, and I was really doing it for him. But he said, "Hey, since you're at that time I was pescatarian, right? He says, since you're pescatarian, why don't you go vegan and eat that way for 90 days and see how it works for you?" And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm kind of doing this for you, but since you challenged me, I will do it, right? So this is what I did, Chrissy. I went to my doctor and I got all my blood work done because I wanted to see what that journey was going to do for me. And throughout my adult life, I've always had borderline high cholesterol, which I kind of reflected as hereditary.
Hmm.
My dad has high cholesterol. And by the way, my dad just turned 90. So that's pretty exciting. And and he learned to manage his high cholesterol with statins, which I didn't want to do. So every time I go, not every time, but most often when I went into my doctor, said, got my blood work, he would come back and say, "Hey, Dana, your cholesterol is a little bit high. We should really talk about getting you on some statins." And I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm a healthy guy. There's got to be a way around this. And so I went in, got the blood work done, and of course he came back to me and said, "Hey, your cholesterol a little high." 90 days later, I went back in, got everything checked again, and my cholesterol dropped 70 points.
Wow. Wow.
So, by the way, it wasn't easy those 90 days. And I talk to people about this all the time, people that have interest in my diet and what I've done or my lifestyle as a whole, because my lifestyle encompasses being vegan. It's that's important to me. Um, it was, even though at that time I was pescatarian, which, your viewers would know that that's eating seafood and then plant-based beyond that. Um, it still was a challenging transition. And I decided to meal plan, which was the smartest thing at the time for me to do to be able to transition that way. By the time I got to 90 days, you already know my cholesterol dropped by 70 points. Uh, I was sleeping better. I don't have trouble sleeping at all. For the last 9 years that I've been vegan, I sleep. My
Mm.
mind doesn't race. I go to bed. I'm out. I'm done. I wake up. I'm refreshed. I
Mm.
feel good. I had this extra energy. Um, Not that I didn't have energy before, but it was unfettered. It was just there, right? I didn't have to put that energy on. I just felt like I had it because I woke up in the morning and I felt great.
Mm.
Um, as a vegan, and I'm assuming other vegans feel the same way, my body flushes out every single day, right? I feel clean. I eat pretty much what I want within that category, as we know. And I don't get bloated. I don't feel heavy. I don't feel weighed down. And this is what I felt after 90 days. So after 90 days, I said, why would I go back? Right? 9 years later, here I am. So that was an interesting journey. And then it was shortly thereafter that I was evaluating my life again and saying, well, yeah, I like what I'm doing, but I don't like that I don't have a lot of control over what I'm doing. And I think there's a really great opportunity to go out there and do something similar. And that's what started before the butcher is I actually went and had um, breakfast with a friend of mine, and I think he was looking for a job at the time, but we were sitting down and talking at a natural foods market that had a vegan cafe, and we're chatting, and I said, "Hey, just keep this between us, but I'm looking to break away and start my own company." And he looked at me and he says, "Hey, I know somebody else that is thinking the same thing. Maybe you guys should talk." And so I went and talked to him, and fortunately on his side, he had a angel investor that was open to investing, and that's when we got things started. So but my journey was actually started in January when I said, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and by September, my company was launched.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
stars really just were
Oh
aligned.
yeah,
This was
we
meant to
moved
happen.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave my notice, I think in mid August to Beyond and said, "Hey, I'm going out to do something on my own." Didn't tell them, of course, what I was doing at the time, but and September 1st, I officially launched the company. By April of the next year, we were selling our products into restaurants out in Southern California. So it was a
Amazing.
very quick journey, and been a lot of fun since then.
And so, yeah, and so tell me, what was it that you wanted to do differently? Was it just a matter of autonomy and wanting to run your own operation, or were there particular products or directions you wanted to explore that you couldn't or hadn't been able to do with
Yeah.
Beyond?
Yeah, beyond my role was really just going out and selling what they put in front of me. So that's what I
Hmm.
was doing there, and I thought there was an opportunity to provide other products, and we did that. We released when we opened up and released our products into food service. We had 7 products right out the gate, which is pretty crazy. So
That's
we
a
had
lot of
chicken chunk.
products.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
it was a lot. So we had chicken chunks, beef tips, pulled pork. We had a beef like crumble, chorizo, Italian like crumble. I don't know what else we had, but something that was the base of what we started. And what's exciting is after almost 8 years, we're still selling those same products. Now we've done some what I call improvements on those products over the years to make them have better texture and bite and taste and reduce the ingredients wherever we could, and adapted and changed ingredients wherever we could to make it better for you as much as we could along the way. But it's that was the start, and it's been quite a roller coaster ride since then. I can tell you
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me this, like setting out with this new company, really what was driving you? What was your motivation? Was it simply that this was a huge market share that you were interested in getting into? Was it reducing animal suffering? Was it human health? Like what was the driving factor for you?
Well, it wasn't singular, but the main driving factor was what I went through. And I thought that was a journey that other people could go through and experience similar things that I went through. Now, I wasn't eating plant-based meats at the time. There wasn't a lot out there that was kind of
Yeah.
like that. So I was doing the old-fashioned, like I'm going to put my beans and my rice together, and then maybe I'll have some tofu and things like that. Um, so I thought maybe I can make this a little easier for other people that were interested in this type of journey in their lives. And yes, I do look at our foods as transitional and still available after you transition. Meaning that
Right, right.
if you're looking for comfort food and one of your favorite things is spaghetti bolognese, well, if you use our Italian crumble inside a sauce and you heat it up just like you would with normal, ground beef or Italian ground, it's really difficult to tell the difference. And so that's comfort food for people. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
that's how I love to eat. So if I start eating that way, does that make me a vegan? Well, no, it doesn't make you a vegan, but that's a different transition. But being able to adjust your lifestyle and eat plant-based from time to time is an opportunity for you to look at doing it full time, right?
100%. And I would argue that for the duration of that veal or of that meal, you're a vegan.
Well,
So
that's for
it's
sure. I joke. That's funny you say that. I joke with people all the time. We do trade shows across the country to promote our foods, and we'll have people come up and they'll be like, "Oh, what's this?" And our products they look very real to comparison to animal-based protein, right?
yeah.
And so they'll try it, and sometimes they'll be hesitant, and we don't hide it. We are what we are. We're proud of what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
And so people will come up, and maybe somebody will say, "Hey, you got to try it," and then I have somebody try it, and then after they eat it, I said, "Now you're officially vegan." Because you just ate that way. But it's interesting because people eat plant-based often. I mean, even people who are ferocious meat eaters,
yeah.
when they eat a
Yeah.
salad, they're eating plant-based, right?
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
they eat some broccoli, you're eating plant-based.
I know.
So,
Yeah. I'm
so I
totally
get kind
with
of a
you.
kick
Yeah.
out of it because most people that are carnivores are actually flexitarians,
Right,
right?
right, right. No, I I'm 100% with you. I mean, it cracks me up when people say like, "Oh, I've never tried vegan food before." It's like, "Oh, you've never had an apple or you've never eaten
Yeah,
oatmeal." Like,
right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So how was it? I mean, starting out on your own and how did it go over with the Beyond folks when they found out what you were doing?
Well, I can tell you, I had some, really great relationships with the people over at Beyond, and a lot of people. In fact, I'm not sure anybody I know that was there when I was there is still there. Maybe one or two people. There's been a lot of turnover there, and a lot of change. But I've stayed in touch with a lot of them that are with different companies now or doing different things. And I have some friends that work there, and they're still friends of mine. So yeah, I was kind of gentle about that. I kind of allowed the information to get out there without making a big announcement about it. I just kind of rolled into it. Now, keep in mind, I started the company in September, but it wasn't until after the first of the year before we really started talking about it because we had to develop products and we had to put together our marketing plan and our plan for sales and so on and so forth. So there was a buffer zone there in between, and I think it worked out great. I think the one thing to remember about our industry, it's very small, it's very focused. We all have very similar missions and visions, and we're all driven by similar things, and whether that's animal cruelty or the environment or our own human health, it's a package. It's not singular, right? You may focus more on one thing than the other, depending on who you are, even as a person. I talk to people about this all the time. You're looking at a three-pronged approach toward the health of our planet. Bottom line, because the health of our planet includes our own personal health, the animals' health, and the earth, our environment, right? So people look at that differently depending on really kind of depending on how old they are. The older age groups are concerned about their own health because they go into the doctor and the doctor says, "Hey, look, you need to eat a little better." Well, doc, how do I do that? Plant-based. I don't know. There isn't a doctor that probably would say, "Hey, anything but plant-based. You need to eat more plant-based," right? You don't need to become a vegan,
I
but you
hope
need to be.
doctors are saying that. I don't know how many doctors are saying that.
I think a lot of them are. There are the ones out there that are, are determined that, a carnivore diet or a meat eater diet, or I'm not even sure what they call it, but
Well, the informed
is,
ones certainly are saying
yeah,
go plant-based, but I think a lot just simply don't know a lot about nutrition. But even so, yeah,
which
I
is
take your
which is
point.
a little
Yeah.
sad. But if you go to a nutritionist, then hopefully that nutritionist is on the right page, right? So that tends to be like the boomers, maybe X Gen that have a bigger focus on their own personal health. And I think when you get down to the millennials and Z Gen, they're concerned about the environment. That's something that is important to them. And I've noticed with even the youngest generations, Alpha Gen, and I guess now there's a Beta Gen. I don't know if you've heard that, like
You're
babies.
asking
I
the
don't know
wrong
how they come
person.
up with
I
this
lose
stuff. I,
track.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't know where it comes from, but uh, I see often that they're concerned about the animals. They see, they don't understand the same way we understand. Though most of us just put up a block when it comes to what you're eating, when it's animal based, and they don't want to know, right? But there's a lot of curiosity. I think what's exciting though is getting into more of the grassroots movement of what we're doing because I wish that would happen. We kind of exploded and then the bubble burst and now we're rebuilding. Rebuilding is not the right word, but I think we're getting on that grassroots train, which
Mm.
means the younger generations, and mostly the alpha, beta, and maybe Z. Those are children of millennials, right? Maybe X Gen, but mostly millennials, and they're growing up this way. They already know what this is all about. That we don't have to educate them.
Mm.
So if they're being influenced by their peers, I think what we're going to just see is this natural growth forward that's going to be strongly rooted to the younger generations that understand how important it is to eat plant-based.
Mm,
And so as we move forward, it's just going to generationally, it's going to be accepted because that's what it is. Just like generationally in the great generation, and then the boomers, even into the X gen, it was like, hey, meat and potatoes, right? This is the way you eat, right? I think we're just going to see that transition naturally.
yeah, it's interesting to hear that perspective. I mean, I think you may be right. I certainly am aiming for you to be right, and I see it the same way in the sense that it won't be thought of anymore as vegan food. It'll just be food. That other
Yeah,
stuff wasn't really food to begin with. That other
right, right.
stuff is living sentient beings.
Yeah.
But yeah, your point about the health of the planet, everything being interconnected. I mean, it makes so much sense because if we are all connected, then of course what's going to be healthiest for our human bodies is also what's healthiest for the non-human animals and the health of the planet and the starving children in Africa. It makes total sense. So for me, that was almost a spiritual experience that I had after going vegan when it all came together. How okay, what I had done out of concern for what was happening to the animals, oh, come to find out that coincidentally, it's also the most healing thing for my own body and for the planet. And oh, what a coincidence. Love seems to work on every level, no matter what
Yeah.
angle you approach it from. So that's really interesting. And I'm honestly heartened by your perspective, being in the industry and seeing this trend from a different angle. So that's encouraging. But tell me, I mean, what was it like developing these products and kind of starting from square one? Like, where did you even begin?
Well, fortunately, I have a gentleman that continues to work for us that already understood how to work with these type of proteins, and I wish I had that capability of actually developing these type of products. Everything was up here, right? I like,
Hmm.
hey, I want to do this and I want to do that, and then
Yeah,
he brought that to fruition. So
you're like the
it,
software developer, and he's the coding guy.
that's exactly it. Exactly it. And he is just really great at creating products. And we've done some really great things along the way. And we've got some really interesting things coming up too. And we're listening. The one thing, and this, I think this may be one of the reasons why we're still around because a lot of companies, and I have friends that lost their companies, after COVID and with all the transitions and the struggles in the industry, it's been tough. And we've been around for almost 8 years now. We're not going anywhere. I mean, we're kind of like part of the OGs here, right? Because this really started with Beyond and Impossible and their big push about, 9, 10 years ago. And there's been a lot of things that have happened during that time. But I think what has kept us in the mix is just providing really good products that tend to be a little bit different than what our competitors have on the market. And I've seen them copy our products as well over time, just seeing our overall success. But I think what was perhaps missing in my life prior to starting this company was um, that decision making position, meaning that I can make the decisions based on what I know. And I learned the best way to know is just to go out and talk to people,
Hmm.
and listen, and hear and change and adapt because of what they're saying and what they want. And you don't need to talk to a million people to figure out what they want. You can talk to 20 people if they're the right people, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
that's a good section of the population that helps you get there. But our products have been really well received over the years. We're mostly in food service and in what I call industrial. So we provide ingredients for other manufacturers that make pizzas or burritos or empanadas
Mm.
and want a plant-based meat in those
Hmm.
products. So we do a lot of that, and we've done really well doing that along the way.
Yeah, there's a company you may be familiar with here in Nashville called the Beehive. Are
Yeah,
you
good
familiar
friend
with
of mine.
them?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and they have kind of a, I think they're much smaller than your operation, but yeah, they have a similar niche in terms of providing the plant-based ingredients for restaurants that,
yeah, yeah.
use them to
They
make
do a
other
really
foods.
great job too, and it's fun to have those relationships with other business owners and other founders that have decided to head down this path and try to provide something better for all of us.
Yeah. So, in talking to people and just like you mentioned, just really hearing what people had to say and where they were coming from, what did you hear from people in terms of the sorts of products they were looking for?
Well, I'll tell you what's happened over the past couple of years is people have been really looking for um, cleaner products. They've been looking for products that are more really vegetable based. It's an
Hmm.
interesting thing because I've seen kind of a term. We are a alt meat company, so we make plant-based meats. But a couple of our fastest growing products are now good old fashioned veggie burgers.
Mm.
People
Mm.
want to see the vegetables back in their, they won't stop eating the other products we make, but they say, hey, I'd kind of like to see my carrots and my zucchini and my mushrooms. And
Huh.
so we started making a veggie burger that's vegan. So the old traditional veggie burgers, a lot of them were vegan. They're vegetarian because they
Right.
had egg in it or cheese or maybe both. So we
Hmm.
put plant-based cheese and plant-based egg in our product, and we have I call it VegBurg. We're actually releasing it officially at the National Restaurant Association show in May in Chicago, and that's going to be our next biggest launch. Will be our VegBurg, and it's an amazing product. I mean, it is so good. It's like the new evolution of the old-fashioned veggie burger that you just like, wow, this thing is crazy good.
That's so funny. It's like, yeah, retro and
Yeah,
meta, like
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
vegan version of the old veggie burger. That's hilarious. Yeah.
yeah, and it's really good. We're also venturing a little bit into, all of our products right now are frozen, fresh
Hmm.
type products, and mostly ingredient based. So you would use it if you were making a pizza or a burrito, or
Hmm.
we have an amazing pepperoni, by the way. That's a crazy product of ours. But all these different products are that way. So we have ventured now, and it's something that has been I've been pushing for over 2 years now, and it's been a real challenge to make something that really mimics the animal-based protein variety of what we're putting together, and
Hmm.
it's a meat stick. So you like the old-fashioned Slim Jim, and we nailed it. We have a pepperoni style, and we're finishing up on a teriyaki style that we will be launching in the fall, and you should be able to find it anywhere across the country. And the exciting thing about this is being shelf stable. This can go into, 7-Eleven, your
Yeah.
nearest convenience store. It can go into CVS or Walgreens. It can go into your grocery stores, all hanging there right as you're walking out in that, impulse buyer, grab that as you go. It is so crazy. It's addictive. I'm telling you, when we get this, I'll send some to you, but it is so
Awesome.
good. And I'm really excited about this one because I think, that category meat stick category is really like it's super focused on like 18 to 35-year-old men, right? And that's a hard transition in vegan world, generally speaking. The
Right.
women a little bit easier, right? Men
Yes.
in that age group, and I think we got something that's going to really get them to turn their head and say, I want to try that. And when they buy it and they try it, they're going to eat it again. I'm telling you, it's really good.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. And just from an activism perspective, I mean, you're a business guy. You're not an activist, at least
Right.
overtly. But yeah, just from an activism perspective, getting it in with those sorts of really, really intransigent, people who wouldn't, under other circumstances, be eager to go there. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, how does it, and how do you have, how many sons did you say? Or how
I
many
have two
kids?
sons and one daughter. Yeah.
Two sons and one daughter. And yeah, what do they think of your products? Are they vegan? Are they vegan curious? Like, where are they with all of this?
So yeah, my youngest son, he does the social media for us. He's I would say a flexitarian. He doesn't eat meat, but he'll eat a little bit of chicken. And he loves our products. All my kids love the products. The products are really good. My oldest son is a chef, and he does recipes and cool things with our products all the time. And my daughter just got married. She lives out in Dallas, and
Wow. Oh,
yeah.
that's exciting.
So they're all on. They don't have a choice. Their dad's on board. They've got to be on board, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
the one thing I've never done, Chrissy, is push my lifestyle on other people. I think people have to discover their own lifestyle. And it's all encompassing, right? It's not singular. A lifestyle is not singular. It's not just your diet, it's your activity, it's everything else that you do to wrap
Yeah.
around it. I'm pretty passionate about what I do because I own it, right? This is me. This is who
Yep.
I am, and I believe in it. And I talk to people all the time about it. And I say, look, if this is something you're interested in doing, then do it. But do it right, right? Don't just jump in and say, hey, I'm going to become a vegan because, over 90% of diets fail. It shouldn't be a diet, it should be a lifestyle. And I think that's the winner there. That's how we all win.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is so much more. I mean, I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that. And a lot of vegans don't even necessarily realize that going in. I don't think for me, I recognized what a life change it would be. I knew it would affect how I ate, and I was doing it for, for ethical reasons, beyond dietary. But I didn't realize what a seismic shift it would be just in terms of my whole life perspective. And
Yeah,
I've had many other guests on the show mention that as well, like a vegan bodybuilder recently who was on, and he said, how when he went vegan, he just didn't realize that it would change everything, just everything about the way he
hmm,
saw the world. So
yeah,
that's beautiful that you've been able to just incorporate that into your profession in a way that, like, I can tell you feel integrated. You have integrity in the sense of this, like you said, this is you. This
yeah,
is you. You're not a separate person for your personal life and your professional life in terms of what matters to you and what you're trying to build. So that's
yeah,
really cool. And the fact that you care about it and are enthusiastic about it, and like you said, are able to fall asleep at night. You're not waking up with that stress, sick in the way that you were, way
yeah,
back when you made that change. So that's I'm sure that's more inspiring to your kids than, any single individual thing you could point to. Just
right,
seeing a
right.
dad who's excited about what he does and has a life that he enjoys.
Yeah,
Have
it's interesting because I didn't go into it trying to be inspiring to
mm,
anybody, but
mm,
a lot of people tell me that, and I never reflected on my life that way. I just thought, hey, um, uh, in life, you've got to do what's right for you.
yeah,
If you're not happy, the people that you care about around you aren't going to be happy with you, right? It
right,
starts with you. So figure that out for yourself. And when you
yeah.
get there, people are going to be excited for you and for themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's what everybody wants. So I can be inspired by somebody who has a passion for something that I have absolutely no interest in, but it's still
Mhm.
inspiring to me to see
Right.
someone pursuing a passion. And in this case, your passion also happens to be helping a lot of humans and a lot of non-humans. So that's, yeah, a win-win. But
Yeah,
tell
that
me
feels
this,
good.
how would you say that you personally have evolved as a vegan?
Well, it's interesting that you would ask that. I think what it did was open up my eyes to a lot of things I wasn't paying a lot of attention to prior to that. I'm talking about the animals and the environment more than my own personal health. That part I got right away, right?
Mhm.
But once I got there, I have I was fortunate because I was working for a plant-based company and then I started a plant-based company. So all of that was part of my own personal mission and my
Mm.
own personal vision. And so when you're vegan, whether you realize it at the beginning when you start eating that way, or you realize it down the road. At some point in time, you're going to realize that there's a full circle here, and it's not just the animals, and it's not just the environment, and it's not just your health. It's all three of them together. And I think that's what really opened me up was when I became vegan. I realized, hey, this journey is so much bigger than me, but it has to start with me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if I never get the journey started, I'm not going to see everything else out there the same way as I would see it eating plant-based. And that is a constant evolution, right? It doesn't stop. It will be that way for me the rest of my life. My journey will continue that way, and learning and opening up to things that I hadn't been a part of before is part of that experience.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, like you said, having that be part of the experience is it's not like we're waiting to get to this safe resting place where there's nothing more to learn, there's nothing more to
Yeah,
discover, and there's nothing more to accomplish or find out about ourselves in the world. Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
yeah.
So what are some of your favorite products of your own products? And also, I meant to ask, how did you come up with the name Before the Butcher?
That's an interesting one too. We were sitting kind of doing a round table trying to figure out what we were going to do, and I kept thinking to myself, well, where does this really start, right? And for a meat eater, right? It's when you think about a meat eater, for whatever reason, just this idea of butcher comes. It came into my mind because I grew up in that type of environment back in Wisconsin, because it's such a meat centric um, area, right? That
Yeah.
region in the Midwest is very meat centric.
Yeah.
And so there were butchers on every corner, it seemed like. There were bowling alleys and butchers, right? And then breweries, right? So you had all those back there, right? And they all worked together. So I kept thinking, in my mind, I kept thinking butcher, butcher. And I said, well, but what happens before the butcher? Because there's something before that. And before you get to the butcher, you've got your plants, because those animals are eating plants, right? All the largest animals in the world, they're not carnivores. They're plant eaters, right? And so that's kind of how it evolved. We were talking about vegan butcher and this and that. And I said, look, I don't want to be that in your face.
Mhm.
I want a name for our company that's going to stimulate people and their mind and saying, well, what do you mean by that before the butcher? Because immediately you're like, oh, okay, so you guys make meat. Yes, you're right. We make meat, but our meats are made from plants. So we make plant-based meats. So it stimulated conversation. And that's kind of
Mhm.
how before the butcher came around.
That's yeah, I love that because before the butcher, well, I'm thinking I'm not religious, but I'm thinking back to the Bible. How originally, it was proclaimed like let the plants be your food.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
before the butcher. And before the butcher, in addition to there being plants, there are also living animals. There's
that's right.
life and there's
Yeah,
joy and there's
absolutely.
pleasure. And just the word butcher, it just reminds me. I've told this story on the show before, but there was a period of time back when I was living in New York City. I would commute every day into Grand Central Station, and there's a huge hallway with all kinds of ads lining the hall. And there was this huge, 6 foot tall ad advertising a butcher company. And it was, this big graphic, bloody side of,
Mhm.
a cow. And underneath it said, our butchers are artists. And, I would see that and I would just cringe every time. And then at a certain point, and this was over a decade ago, probably before surveillance was everywhere. I don't think I could have pulled this off now, but I was like, I'm gonna do a little enhancement graffiti there on that sign. And what could I replace that? Our butchers are artists. What could I replace that word with, or at least those first 3 letters? And I came up with, okay, I'll replace the ART with SAD. And so I just did some arts and crafts at home, and then I got up super early the next day, and when no one when no one was around, just real fast, I got the SAD up there so that it said our butchers are sadists. And and it was discovery. I think it was up there at least a good half a day or something before it was noticed. But yeah, just the word butcher. I mean, it's such an evocative word. So I
Mhm.
love that you were able to harness that in your name in a way to provoke thought and provoke reflection and say, okay, before we started doing that, like what was life like? Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, and people seem to respond to it, obviously.
Yeah, it was, in the industry today, we're fairly well known, especially in food service. And so people know who we are. But early on, there was always questions, what kind of meat you got? And so I loved it because I would just dig right in and it says, yeah, we got, all different types of plant-based meats. And so, well, that's not meat. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's all relative to what you believe. And so we're making or mimicking animal-based proteins with plants
Yeah,
because that's what those animals you're eating,
right.
they're eating plants. We're
Right.
just taking the middle guy out, right? So we're taking the animal out.
Exactly. Exactly. Going straight to the source. And just like, the flesh of fruit is often referred to as, the meat of the fruit or the
That's
flesh
right.
of the fruit. So, yeah, like you
Yeah,
said, it's all just language and terminology. So, yeah, that's
yeah.
beautiful. Well, what's the best place for people to try your products, order your products, and what would you recommend?
Well, I recommend they just go to beforethebutcher.com and they can look up and see where we are. We have a variety of different ways you can get to it, but mostly in restaurants across the country. Not all of them will, like Beyond Impossible, a lot of them have their name on the menu. Ours doesn't. I always say to people, I say, look, if you go into a grocery store and you go into the frozen foods department and buy a frozen vegan pizza, it's a good chance that's our product on that pizza. And the same thing with burritos or bowls and things like that. Unless it's got the name of another, plant-based meat manufacturer, there's a good chance you're eating our product.
That's really cool. Yeah, you're like the musician's musician, the artist's artist. Yeah, the chef. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, congratulations on everything you've accomplished on this amazing new company that, yeah, I do think is the future of food. Got just a couple more questions for you, but what's next for you? What's the next on the landscape, the next product?
Well, I mentioned earlier our Vegberg, our vegan vegetarian
Yeah, that
patty will be
sounds
hitting the
really fun. That
that
sounds really, really
that's
cool.
that will be hitting the market. Well, actually, this month. So you'll be seeing it by the end of the summer, I think, out on the market. And then our what we call our butcher stick, which is the meat stick, and so
So great. Yeah.
we'll launch pepperoni style and teriyaki style in the fall, and I truly believe you're going to see that all over the place, and I'm really excited about that one. That
That
one is
sounds
a
amazing. And
great
of
one.
course, I living here in Nashville, with truck stops and convenience stores everywhere. I mean, that is perfect for a place like Nashville. So I hope you get them stocked in this neck of the woods.
We're going to be working on it.
Sweet, sweet. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And again, congratulations on just, just taking that leap. I mean, no matter where we are in life, like there comes that time where we have to decide, like, okay, this is it. This is my life. And this is what I'm doing. Is this good enough for me? Not by anyone else's standards, but is this scratching my itch and a life that's worth living by my own standards? So congratulations on doing that and making it happen and inspiring others by your own example, even though you weren't trying to inspire other people. You were just trying to come up with a life that made sense to you. So
Right.
that's awesome. But obviously you're benefiting a lot of other people and non-human people as well in that endeavor. So we all thank you for that. And the final question, which I like to ask all my guests, is there a particular word that for you sums up what being vegan is all about?
Yeah, there is, and it's probably a word you've never heard anybody use in regards to that. And for me, it's lifestyle,
Mm,
and because
mm,
it's encompassing. Lifestyle isn't just what you're eating or your activity. It's everything that you do, right?
mm.
And it's personal to yourself. And I think that when people are making a choice, the choice has to be all encompassing, and that's what lifestyle is.
Yes, yes, that's beautiful. And just like style, like you said, it's personal, it's individual, and it's something that has to be authentic or it's not really going to work. So, yeah,
Agreed.
love it. That makes total sense. All right. Well, Danny, thank you so much for joining us. It's been amazing to hear your story. And we close every episode of the Vegan Posse by taking 30 seconds of silence for all the suffering animals, human and non human, who desire, as we all do, safety, happiness, and the freedom to live out their lives without interference. So, Danny, I invite you to join me in 30 seconds of silence for the animals, and we'll conclude with the sound of the bell. Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Posse. See you next time. Until then, stay strong and stay true.